creator of all things, goodness and kindness are the work of your hands. You have set us free to recognize and help those who struggle, and to comfort and encourage all who suffer and mourn. Holy God, sometimes we're selfish and care more about what we get from following you than practicing humility and kindness to others. Open our eyes to see the only reward that matters is the joy and fulfillment that comes from freely giving ourselves to you and those you give us to serve. Amen. God forgives us and sets our hearts at peace. Thanks be to God.
Continuing through the Gospel of Mark this morning, today's text is from the 10th chapter, beginning at the 35th verse. And for public reading, not the same as a study of language, I've edited together the Easy to Read Bible, Peterson's The Message, and the Hawaii Bible. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said, "Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask for." He said to them, "So what do you want?" They said, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." Jesus answered, "You guys don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup of suffering I must drink, or be immersed in the death that awaits me?" They replied, "For sure." Jesus replied, "Okay, then you'll drink my cup of suffering, and you will be immersed in my death. But sitting at my right hand or my left isn't up to me. Other arrangements are made for that." When the other 10 heard it, they got all hot with James and John. Jesus took them aside and said, "You know how the world's leaders use their power, and their big shots throw their weight around, but not among you. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be number one among you must be servant of all. For even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve, and give his life to set others free." God's word to us this day. Praise God, who still speaking. Let us say what we believe. Let this same mind be in us that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, and being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God also highly exalted him, gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bend, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue should confess to the glory of God. Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen.
Thank you.
sometimes you might find you get what you need. The word according to Nick Jagger. Well, this morning, that's exactly what Jesus tells James and John. They want the top cabinet positions when Jesus sets up his kingdom. Over and over and over, Jesus calls them to be childlike. But here they go again, childishly trying to butt their way to the top. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, professional fishermen, nicknamed the Sons of Thunder, were always wanting Jesus to bring down fire on those who would get in trouble. They just heard Jesus say, the last will be first, and the first will be last. They just heard Jesus challenge his followers to get rid of everything that stands between them and Jesus. And Jesus had just told the crowds that it is impossible to enter the kingdom of God on your own terms. And Jimmy John's comeback is like a kid begging his parents, now before we ask, just say yes. Seriously. Can you beat that for childish? Imagine Jesus who will give them the best seats, meaning they want to rule with Jesus. They want influence in his messianic kingdom. And they want thrones in the new house. Now, they're all speaking the same Aramaic language, okay? So I don't think anything's lost in the translation. Maybe they weren't really listening. Maybe they were into the kingdom, and it set them dreaming about the possibility. Once again, Jesus tells his guys he's headed to Jerusalem and big trouble. He will be handed over to the authorities, put on trial, tortured, and crucified. And after all that, James and John ask Jesus for seats of privilege when he enters his sweet messianic order of arrest, torture, and crucifixion. And Jesus is like, are you not hearing me? What part of this don't you get? Power, the way they want it, the way the Pharisees talk about it, and the way we imagine it, is not at all what Jesus has in mind. Jesus never promises thrones or glory. There is a huge gap between what the sons of thunder want and what they really need. Jesus called, they followed, but the destination was always the cross. Now, Jesus, of course, did a lot of kingdom talk, but all they could see was Jesus sabotaging everything that looked like any kingdom they ever knew. And Mark's been telling us for weeks. Jesus' own family tries to restrain him because they think he's crazy. He tells a synagogue leader at a crowd of mourners that his little dead girl is only sleeping. He angers the rich folks. He has a real soft spot for foreigners, unclean women, sinners in general. He tells people to gouge out their eyes and whack off their hands and feet if those things get them into trouble. The religious leaders are always on his case, and he just keeps predicting his own torture and death. I mean, hardly a path to fame and glory. But he's preparing a kingdom nevertheless. Just not the kind of kingdom James and John, or maybe even some of us, have been taught to expect. Not some hero who will restore the nation's glory and put sinners in their place. None of that. Instead, the kingdom Jesus comes to establish is a kingdom of service. Jesus says the way to real freedom and true greatness isn't through being powerful by the world's standards, but through being a servant. Not what they expect, yet they stay. They sure don't get what they want, but they hang in there with Jesus and one another. Because following Jesus is never quite what we want, but it is always what we need. Jesus said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Like the disciples, Jesus calls us together in what we call the communion of saints. And he joins us to himself, and by doing that, he joins us to one another. We need each other. So it's really sad, tragic actually, when we childishly pack up and leave because we don't get what we want in church, in family, in politics, you name it. We break relationships and run for what we really need. And yet life and the church go on. And Jesus still keeps calling and still keeps leading. Because whether or not we want what Jesus is serving up at the moment, truth is, it's always what we need. So I guess, Mick Jagger was at least mostly right. You can't always get what you want. But in Jesus, you always get what you need. In this life and the next. In the name of Jesus.
Let us be bread blessed by the Lord, broken and shared, life for the world. Let us be wine, love freely poured. Let us be one in the Lord. The Lord be with you. Lift up your hearts. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. You alone, O God, know the secrets of the universe. You set the earth on its foundations and filled it with life. Your creative power is beyond our comprehension, and your purposes in the world can only be glimpsed. Yet you come to us in Jesus Christ, who as a servant of all, worked and prayed with us for the release of all who are held hostage to sin and death. When tyrants rose against him, he suffered and died, but you raised him to new life and made him the source of eternal life for all.
On the last night with his friends, our Lord took bread, and after he gave thanks, he broke it, gave it to them, saying, take and eat, for this is my body given for you. And when the supper was over, he took the cup. And after giving thanks, he gave it to them to drink, saying, drink this, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sin. Whenever you drink it, do so for the remembrance of me. Send your Spirit, O God, upon the bread and cups before us, that they may be the body and blood of Jesus, the food and drink of you and unending life in him. Make us alive to your Spirit, that we might always hear your voice, follow where you lead, loving and serving you all our days. As we gather at your table, we pray for Wayne York's family, for Diana Lamb, Beverly Toner, Kathy Hudson, Aaron Funk, Sally Holmes, Tracy Colstead, and others whom we lift before you. Go peace. May the peace of Christ be with you. In the name of the Father, the